Right now, nearly every NBA free agent is signed to a team, and while not a ton of trades have gone down so far, I think now's a good time to analyze everything that's gone down up until this point with the best and worst of NBA free agency. I was going to make this video a little sooner, but I wanted to wait until most players signed, and I think we're at that point now. I should mention though, we're not really talking about anything from the NBA draft, and there's also a lot of moves that I've loved that teams have made this postseason, like the Nets signing Patty Mills, and just because I don't mention their teams, or for any of the other teams I don't mention, it doesn't mean that I don't love some of the moves that they made. I just had to pick the best of the best and the worst of the worst to go over. And a good start to that is the Miami Heat, because I think it's safe to say that the Miami Heat are without a doubt definitely the biggest winners in the Eastern Conference this year by far, and make a case for the entire league. They lost out on a few good role players, but managed to re-sign Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, and Victor Oladipo on a minimum deal, which is either going to be a huge steal, and if not, they barely spent anything, so they're fine. Which also makes it sort of a make or break year for them this season, because if he plays good, they probably aren't going to be able to re-sign him in 2022. But as for this offseason, they signed Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, and Markieff Morris, giving them on paper the best starting five in the Eastern Conference. And this team's got starters, depth, veterans, shooting, and they're really going to be a real threat this year. I'm not going to say they're coming out of the East or anything just yet, but we'll see. A loser for this offseason, and it's just been terrible, it has been the Portland Trailblazers. Dame called them out and put them on the spot to make something happen quick, and they signed Cody Zeller and re-signed Norman Powell. And lose out on Zach Collins and Carmelo Anthony. If I'm Damian Lillard, I'm starting to pack my bags. On to something a little more positive though, Chris Paul takes this spot for a winner. The Suns are kind of winners for re-signing him to a big deal, but they kind of aren't, because no doubt they needed to lock him down. They needed to do what they could to keep him with the team to run it back for the next couple of seasons. But with his new 4-year, $120 million contract, he's going to be making $30 million a year until he's 40. And that's why it's kind of a loss for Phoenix. He's going to fall off a good amount by that time and be overpaid for at least a portion of his contract. But again, I'm not mad. A team like the Pelicans was trying to steal him away, and because he got that long term of a deal, at his age is why he takes the spot. While on the other hand, Dennis Schroeder may very well be the biggest loser of the 2021 free agency. The Lakers offered Schroeder a 4-year, $84 million contract so he could be their long-term point guard, and he turned it down to try to get a 4-year, $120 million deal. I mean, you just gotta be smart about these kind of things. Obviously, he wasn't gonna get Chris Paul type money, and I was even kind of surprised by that Lakers offer.
And I wasn't the only one, because instead of all that, he just signed with the Celtics on a 1-year, $6 million deal. Yeah, that hurts.
And speaking of the Los Angeles Lakers, mainly because Dennis did them a solid and turned down that deal, they were the biggest winners of the Western Conference and may take the spot for winners of the entire free agency. Now, they lost a lot of players. Alex Caruso, Markieff Morris, and Andre Drummond signed with other teams in free agency, and KCP, Montrezl Harrell, and Kuzma got sent to Washington in the Russell Westbrook trade. But with that being said, they added him, Kendrick Nunn, who took less money to sign there, Dwight Howard, who's a huge improvement from any center that they had last year, Malik Monk took a lot less money, Melo took less money, Trevor Ariza, Bazemore, and Wayne Ellington, which once again gives the Lakers a super team. The roster last year looked solid, but didn't perform like it, but this is a squad that's instantly got to be championship favorites for next year. Of course, we don't know how it'll work out, but we can only assume again that most people are going to predict a Nets and Lakers finals. And I touched on that Wizards trade, and because of it, I'd say the Washington Wizards were surprisingly major winners during free agency, because they flipped John Wall for Westbrook last year, then turned him into a young Kuzma, the former 6th man of the year, and a solid bench player, when it wasn't looking like they'd be able to find a trade for Westbrook at one point. But not only that, they replaced him and signed Spencer Dinwiddie on a great deal, and he's a point guard that looks a lot better next to Bradley Beal, and now thanks to 2 off seasons, they look 10 times better than they used to. On the other hand though, the Dallas Mavericks were pretty big losers because they didn't do much, and I don't see any other way to put it, because after last year it was clear they needed help. They needed to do something big, sign a star or trade Porzingis, and they signed Reggie Bullock and Sterling Brown. They also lost Josh Richardson to the Celtics, and as of right now there's no Porzingis trade rumors going around. Hey, they signed Luka to a max deal, but all I'm saying is they may run out of time eventually if they keep doing nothing in these off seasons. Now, 2 individual players that were huge winners were both of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, because they got pretty big contracts when no one knew for sure just how much they'd really get offered. Don't get me wrong, Kyle hasn't fallen off a bit, and I wouldn't say he's been overpaid at all these last few years, with him making around $30 million a year. I just didn't think he'd be able to sign for that much for the next 3 seasons while he's already 36 years old on his 3-year, $85 million deal. And not only does he get paid, but he gets out of the sinking ship in the Toronto Raptors and now onto a real championship contender. As for DeMar DeRozan, I'm really glad the Bulls got him and Lonzo Ball. I'm excited to see what Zach LaVine can do with the squad. And it makes sense why they offered DeMar probably a bigger deal than he deserved, because not many players have wanted to go to Chicago these past few years, and now he's going to be the veteran of the team. But I really didn't see any team giving him the same 3-year, $85 million deal that Kyle got. Sure, he's still only 32, but I just saw him getting something around $20 million a year based on what he brings to the table. But again, like I said, I'm not mad at the Bulls for making this move, and it also makes DeRozan definitely a winner here. What makes the Sacramento Kings once again losers is the fact that they once again blew an opportunity to make their team better. They almost had a trade with the Lakers to finally trade Buddy Hield, but instead they took too long and the Lakers took a trade with the Wizards instead. They could have got Kyle Kuzma and another strong player, but instead they're now just going to spend even longer trying to get rid of one player who's a little bit older than they'd like compared to the rest of their team. And it just seems like Sacramento's always in this position where they just missed out. Switching over conferences to the East though, the Atlanta Hawks are doing everything right and have been for a while. They stayed on that path this year too as they re-signed Trae Young, which was obvious, but John Collins too to a 5-year, $125 million deal to keep him when they weren't sure if they would. And it could come back to bite them because they may not be able to sign some of these other young guys on the roster later on, but we know that John Collins and Trae Young work right now, so I definitely think they did the right thing and kept what they know works. And now they can let these guys grow together. Someone who didn't do a good job of investing in their young talent, at least in my opinion, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They draft Evan Mobley 3rd overall and then give Jared Allen a $100 million contract in the same offseason. Why would you give an above average center that kind of money when you're already drafting a potential future star at the same position? Last season, Cleveland had like 5 centers and a lot of different ways they could take things, and they may have gone with one of the worst scenarios. Don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on Jared Allen, I just don't think he's worth that kind of investment and really don't think that he did anything these past few months to show that he deserved that money. And plus, they still haven't traded Kevin Love. The New Orleans Pelicans are in a similar boat. They had a terrible offseason. Now, I like the trade they made early on, Steven Adams and Bledsoe for Jonas Valanciunas. It helps space the floor and gets rid of Eric Bledsoe's bad contract. But how are they going to do that? Clear some cap space, then let Lonzo Ball walk and make a trade for Devontae Graham. Like, I get they were going for Chris Paul, but you don't let Lonzo Ball walk for the chance that they might have gotten Chris. And dumb decisions like this is why Chris left initially, Anthony Davis left, and now Zion is reportedly unhappy. Now, the Utah Jazz didn't make a ton of moves, but in my mind at least, they without a doubt been winners here, because they were able to bring in veteran Rudy Gay, and now they got the rare double Rudys on one team, and Hassan Whiteside, and they may not have been able to ask for a better backup center. Whiteside's like the perfect center to bring in when Rudy Gobert goes to the bench, so that they can keep the same gameplay and defensive style alive. Before, when Gobert would go off the floor, they'd have to completely change things up, but now, not so much. And I just think the experience that Rudy Gay brings off the bench is really needed for them. And speaking of Rudy Gay, that brings us to the Spurs, and why I think they lost out this year. They lost out on Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan, and Patty Mills, and all they got in return was basically Doug McDermott, Zach Collins, and Thaddeus Young. Not the best compensation. Like, I get they needed to make up their mind and decide if they were gonna go young or stay competitive with veterans, but I mean, come on, if they would have acted sooner, they wouldn't have had to give away all those guys for next to nothing. Now, I'd also say the Boston Celtics were slight winners. They gave up Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, but were able to bring in Al Horford, Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, and Enes Kanter on a minimum deal. They solved the problem of needing a better center, of Kemba Walker not working out, and of finding a replacement point guard. Losing Fournier probably hurt them the most though, because they were expecting to keep him this year, so their offense is taking a hit. We just have to wait and see if they're able to make up for it next season. And finally, my last winners for this video, and I guess we can call them winners, is the New York Knicks. Now, I don't love their offseason, but I don't hate it. I just wish they would have done a little bit more. They brought in Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, while re-signing Derrick Rose, which was needed, Julius Randle, Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, and Taj Gibson. And again, Fournier's a perfect fit here. They really needed a shot creator and scorer, and himself and Kemba are both going to do that for New York. But it's just like with just those two moves, the Knicks now went from a slightly above average team to a slightly more above average team. Like, those guys aren't taking them to championship status or even making them favorites in the East. But as always, in casual Knicks fashion, there's always next year. If you enjoyed the video or think there's any teams that I may have missed, comment them down below and let me know. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.